A single decision, a single moment. That's all it took to define Carrie Bradshaw's journey in the finale of, and just like that season 3, after years of chasing love, losing it, finding it again, and questioning what it all means, Carrie's ending left fans divided, some heartbroken, some inspired, and some completely stunned. But what does her finale really mean? And why does it feel like the end of an era, not just for Carrie, but for all of us who grew up with her story? The finale of, and just like that season 3, wasn't just another chapter in Carrie Bradshaw's life, it was the closing of a book that has been open for more than 2 decades. From her first voiceover in Sex and the City to the final scenes in season 3, Carrie has been more than a fictional character. She has been a mirror, a symbol, and a friend to millions of viewers who saw parts of their own lives reflected in her search for happiness. To understand her ending, we have to step back for a moment and remember who Carrie was when we first met her. She was the woman who lived in a tiny apartment with an oversized closet. She wrote about love like it was the most complicated math equation in the world. She believed in passion, in fashion, and in the kind of romance that could turn a rainy night in New York into something unforgettable. But what made Carrie so real was not just her dreams, it was her mistakes. She wasn't perfect. She stumbled, she cheated, she lost, she hurt people, and she got hurt in return. And yet, she always came back with a question worth asking. By the time And Just Like That arrived, Carrie was no longer the same wide-eyed columnist we once knew. She was older, wiser, and grieving. Losing big in the first season was not just a storyline, it was a shockwave that redefined her world. It forced her to face life alone again, but this time with the weight of years behind her. Fans watched as she tried to rebuild, balancing the old parts of herself with the new realities of loss, aging, and shifting friendships. And that's why the season 3 finale feels so heavy, so final. Because it's not just about who Carrie ends up with or what she chooses to do. It's about how a woman who has lived through every version of love and loss decides to define her life in the end. The opening of the finale sets the tone right away. The city feels familiar but changed, just like Carrie herself. She walks through familiar streets, but her steps are slower, her gaze deeper. There's no longer the rush of chasing the next great romance or the next glamorous night out. Instead, there's reflection. A sense that everything has been leading to this very moment. In this section of the story, the writers invite us to reflect as well. To think about where we were when Sex and the City first aired, who we were when Carrie was asking, "Can we have it all?" And where we are now, as she closes this final chapter. It's not just Carrie who has changed, it's us too. Her ending forces us to measure our own lives against hers, to ask if we have found peace with the choices we've made, or if, like Carrie, we are still searching. What makes this finale stand out is its honesty. Unlike the fairy tale endings of the past, Carrie's story is more grounded. It acknowledges that not everything is tied up neatly, and not every question has a perfect answer. But that's what makes it powerful. Because life, as Carrie always reminded us, isn't about finding the perfect answer. It's about asking the right questions. So when fans ask, what does this ending mean? The truth is, it means everything and nothing at the same time. It means Carrie has come full circle. It means she has accepted her past, embraced her present, and chosen her future, even if it's not the one we all imagined. It means the story of Carrie Bradshaw is less about who she loves, and more about how she finally learned to love herself. And just like that, we realize this is not only Carrie's ending, it's ours too. Season 3 of And Just Like That gave us a Carrie Bradshaw who was both familiar and completely new. The city was the same: buzzing streets, late-night lights, and endless possibilities, but Carrie was no longer the carefree columnist chasing after unpredictable love stories. Instead, she was a woman standing at a crossroads, pulled between who she used to be and who she is now. From the very first episodes, it was clear that this season was different for Carrie. Her grief over Big was no longer raw and fresh, but it lingered like a shadow. It wasn't the kind of sadness that broke her every day, it was quieter, woven into her daily life. It showed up in the way she hesitated before opening up to someone new, in the way she clung to her memories, and in the way she questioned what her life should look like after losing her great love. Yet, Season 3 wasn't just about grief. It was also about rediscovery. Carrie began asking herself, who am I now? What do I want next? For the first time in years, she wasn't defining herself by her partner, her writing, or her city. She was trying to define herself on her own terms. That meant exploring new romances but not rushing into them. That meant saying yes to opportunities that might have scared her in the past. And most of all, it meant letting herself be vulnerable. In ways she never had before, the season highlighted how friendships became her anchor. Miranda and Charlotte, though going through their own transformations, were central to Carrie's evolution. Miranda, grappling with the messy truth of her own choices, reminded Carrie that it's never too late to rewrite your life. Charlotte, with her constant fight to balance family, identity, and self-worth, reflected a different kind of struggle, one that Carrie both admired and resisted. Their friendship wasn't just background noise. It was a mirror showing Carrie the many possible paths of womanhood and forcing her to confront her own. Career played a role too, but not in the way it once did. Carrie's writing had always been her outlet, her way of making sense of the chaos of life and love. But this season, her relationship with her work shifted. She wasn't just writing about others anymore, she was writing about herself, her healing, her doubts. Her words carried a weight that came with age and experience, not just curiosity. That evolution reminded viewers that Carrie wasn't just the girl with the questions anymore. She was now the woman with stories worth telling. Romantically, Season 3 was filled with small sparks, missteps, and moments of possibility. Each new connection tested Carrie's heart in different ways. Some reminded her of the excitement of being desired again, while others pushed her to ask if she was truly ready to move forward. The writers carefully avoided giving her a love story that felt like a repeat of the past. Instead, they showed us a woman learning that love after loss isn't about replacing someone. It's about redefining what love means. One of the most unique threads in Season 3 was nostalgia. The show wove reminders of Carrie's past into her present, forcing her to reckon with how far she had come. Old habits resurfaced, old haunts called her back, and old feelings whispered in her ear. It was almost as if the city itself was testing her, asking if she was ready to move forward, or if she still belonged to the past, and the tension between moving on and holding on was at the core of her Season 3 journey. Carrie wasn't racing to a conclusion. She was walking slowly, step by step, toward one. Each episode added another piece to the puzzle, another clue about what her finale might look like. Would she choose love again? Would she embrace solitude? Would she close the door on her past or keep it cracked open forever? By the time the finale arrived, we had watched a woman peel back every layer of herself. We had seen her stumble, reflect, rebuild, and question. Season 3 wasn't about dazzling romance or shocking drama, it was about honesty. It was about what it really means to live after loss, to grow after decades of mistakes, and to ask yourself, who am I when no one else is defining me? Carrie Bradshaw's journey in Season 3 set the stage perfectly for her ending. Because without seeing her wrestle with those questions about love, about identity, about friendship, the finale wouldn't carry the same weight. It's not just the last decision that matters. It's the journey that brought her there. And just like that, we were reminded that growing older doesn't mean the story ends, it just means the story changes. Asterisk. The finale of And Just Like That Season 3 was not designed to shock with a twist, but to linger like an echo. Every scene felt deliberate, as if the writers wanted us to notice the silences, the glances, and the pauses as much as the words. It was less about grand gestures and more about the choices Carrie made quietly, choices that told us everything about where she had arrived in her life. The first act of the finale set the emotional stage. Carrie's apartment, once the backdrop of so many romantic highs and devastating lows, became more than a setting, it became a symbol. Surrounded by the memories of Big, the remnants of her old self, and the echoes of nights spent typing away. At her desk, Carrie had to decide whether she would stay tied to the past or carve a space for her future. The camera lingered on her familiar corners, her closet, her desk, as if saying goodbye right along with her. For fans, it wasn't just Carrie leaving behind her apartment, it was us, leaving behind decades of connection to her world. From there, the finale moved into Carrie's relationships, the heart of her story. Throughout the season, we had seen her test the waters of love again, but here she stood still. Not rushing into a new romance, not clinging to the idea of a partner defining her story. Instead, the finale offered a different kind of resolution, Carrie choosing balance. She didn't dismiss the possibility of love, but she didn't make it her ultimate goal either. This wasn't the Carrie who once obsessed over Big's mixed signals or panicked about being single. This was a Carrie who finally seemed at peace. With not having all the answers, one of the most emotional beats came during her time with Miranda and Charlotte. Their presence in the finale wasn't just fan service, it was the reminder that love stories come in many forms. For Carrie, friendship had always been as powerful as romance, and the finale doubled down on that truth. Miranda, messy and flawed, and Charlotte, steadfast but constantly evolving, represented the grounding forces in Carrie's life. Their conversations weren't just filler, they were the glue holding her together. In their laughter, in their arguments, in their quiet moments of support, we saw Carrie realize that her ending didn't need to be defined by a man at all. The writing also threaded in callbacks that rewarded longtime fans, small details, a pair of shoes, a location from years past, a familiar line were scattered like Easter eggs, reminding us that everything Carrie experienced in her 20s and 30s had led her here. These nods weren't cheap nostalgia. They were bridges, tying the beginning of her story to its end. For viewers who had walked with her since the early days, it was bittersweet. It was like seeing old photographs one last time before putting them away, and then came the choice, the moment fans had been waiting for. Carrie stood, not with her heart racing, not with tears streaming, but with calm resolve. She chose to step into a future that wasn't about chasing someone or proving something. She chose herself. Whether that meant embracing solitude, opening herself to new love without fear, or simply continuing to write her story without knowing how it ends, the meaning was clear. Carrie Bradshaw had finally stopped running in circles. She had finally arrived. The finale didn't give us a dramatic happily ever after, and that was the point. Life rarely ties itself into a perfect bow. Instead, the writers gave us something more honest, an ending that looked like a beginning. Carrie wasn't closing her life, she was turning the page. And just like that, she was free. The power of the finale came from its restraint. No fireworks, no grand declarations, no neat resolution. Just a woman, standing in her truth, surrounded by the people who mattered most, ready for whatever comes next. For fans who expected a fairy tale, it may have felt underwhelming. But for those who had grown alongside Carrie, who understood that life at 50 doesn't look like life at 30, the ending was deeply satisfying, because in the end, the finale wasn't about who Carrie ends up with. It was about who she becomes. And the answer was clear. She became someone whole, someone wiser, someone who could finally write her story without hesitation. That's why her last moments felt both final and eternal. Because Carrie Bradshaw didn't give us an ending to cry over, she gave us one to carry with us, asterisk. Carrie Bradshaw's final moments in, and just like that season 3, were more than a conclusion to one character's journey. They were a meditation on what it means to grow older, to love and lose, and to keep reinventing yourself no matter how much life has already given or taken away. The ending wasn't about wrapping everything up neatly. Instead, it was about giving Carrie, and by extension us, the gift of possibility. For years, Carrie's life was a question: can we really have it all? Love, friendship, career, identity, the show built itself around that question, offering different answers at different stages of her life. In the finale, Carrie doesn't give us a simple solution. Instead, she shows us that having it all might never be the point. The point is living fully with what you do have, and making peace with what you don't, choosing herself, not a man, Not a perfect life plan, not an escape into nostalgia. Carrie's finale makes a radical statement. It tells us that fulfillment doesn't always look like a wedding dress or a new relationship. Sometimes it looks like walking into an empty apartment and feeling at peace with the silence. Sometimes it looks like sharing dinner with friends and realizing that this kind of love, steady and loyal, is enough. Sometimes it looks like sitting down at your desk, not to write about heartbreak, but to write about resilience. The symbolism was everywhere. The closing doors, the quiet city streets, even the small callbacks to Carrie's past relationships, all of it was designed to remind us that her story has been one long loop of searching, losing, and rediscovering. But this time, the loop finally broke. This time, she didn't circle back to Big or Eden or the old version of herself. She stood still, and for once, that was progress. The girl who used to measure her worth through others finally chose to measure it within herself. For fans, this ending might feel bittersweet. It's not the fairy tale they imagined when they first fell in love with Sex and the City. Carrie doesn't ride off into the sunset with her soulmate. She doesn't land the perfect career triumph, and she doesn't escape into some glamorous reinvention. Instead, she simply arrives at herself. And that simplicity is what makes the ending timeless, because the truth is, most of us don't get fairy tale endings either. What we get are small victories, little moments of clarity, and the courage to keep moving forward. Carrie's legacy, then, isn't about who she dated or what she wore. It's about what she represented for decades, the permission to ask hard questions about life. When she wondered if men were just like taxes, if he's just not that into you, or if maybe some women aren't meant to be tamed, she wasn't just talking about love. She was talking about the uncertainty of being human. Her final season carried that spirit to the end, showing us that questions are often more powerful than answers. Looking back, it's clear that Carrie's story is less about romance and more about evolution. She began as a woman defined by her pursuit of love. She ends as a woman defined by her acceptance of herself. That arc isn't glamorous, but it is profound. It reflects the real experience of aging, of realizing that your life is not about one grand love story, but about the collection of choices, friendships, and lessons that shape who you become. And just like that, the show leaves us with a message. Endings aren't really endings. They are turning points. For Carrie, that means stepping into a new chapter where she doesn't need validation from anyone else. For us as viewers, it means letting go of the Carrie we once knew and accepting the one she has become. The legacy of, and just like that, will always be tied to how it dared to show women aging on screen messy, complicated, and unpolished, but real. Carrie's ending proves that her story wasn't about clinging to youth or chasing perfection. It was about growing, stumbling, grieving, laughing, and still asking the next question. That is what keeps her alive long after the credits roll. So, when fans debate the finale, whether it was satisfying, disappointing, or surprising, the answer lies in its honesty. Carrie Bradshaw's ending wasn't designed to please everyone. It was designed to reflect life itself, unfinished, imperfect, but still beautiful. And maybe that's why it resonates so deeply. Because just like Carrie, we're all writing our own stories, unsure of what the next chapter holds. And just like that, Carrie Bradshaw's ending becomes more than a finale. It becomes a mirror. A reminder that the greatest love story we will ever have is the one we create with ourselves.